The empty jewelry box sits open on Margaret Kellerman's dresser, its burgundy velvet lining still bearing the ghost impression of her grandmother's wedding ring. 3 generations of love vanished between Sunday's church service and Monday's morning coffee. In their Victorian home's last furnished bedroom, where Margaret and Frank now sleep surrounded by boxes marked Sunset Manor, the 78-year-old woman runs her finger along that hollow space where the ring once lay, while her husband of 56 years sorts through papers he's been told he can no longer understand. Their 3 children had arrived like an intervention squad, armed with brochures featuring smiling seniors and manicured lawns, presenting documents already signed, assets already moved, their parents' lives already decided. Frank's mild forgetfulness after sunset, the gentle confusion that made him call Margaret by her maiden name some evenings, had become rapid cognitive decline in their children's telling. Margaret's single fall on the porch steps transformed into inability to maintain safe living conditions. But tomorrow, a woman named Diane Chen will knock on their door, claiming to be from Medicare, carrying forms that hide cameras, speaking in codes that teach resistance, tending their abandoned roses while teaching them to document their own clarity. Have you ever watched someone you love be erased while they're still breathing? Their voice dismissed, their memories questioned, their lifetime of wisdom reduced to a liability on someone else's balance sheet? Stay with us to witness how 2 people everyone counted out discovered that the exit sign their children hung over their door could be read another way entirely, not as an ending, but as an entrance to something their family never saw coming. This is the story of Margaret and Frank Kellerman, and the spring they planted their deepest roots just as everyone expected them to disappear. The silver coffee service disappeared on a Sunday morning while Margaret Kellerman measured grounds for her husband's breakfast. She knew exactly when, between her shuffling to the bathroom at dawn and returning to find their eldest son, David, emerging from the dining room with a cardboard box labeled estate sale. Just clearing out some things you won't need at Sunset Manor, Mom. David set the box by the front door, his developer's smile practiced and empty. No sense keeping valuables in a house you're leaving. Margaret's hand tightened on the coffee scoop. We haven't agreed to leave anywhere. Dad signed the papers Friday. David pulled folded documents from his jacket. Power of attorney, activated for your safety after your fall. Dr. Harrison confirmed Dad's cognitive decline is accelerating. The coffee scoop clattered into the sink. Margaret had fallen once, catching her shoe on the porch step 3 weeks ago. Frank sometimes called her by her maiden name after sunset. Gentle confusion that made them both laugh. Nothing more. Upstairs, Frank still slept. At 81, he rose later than his Navy days allowed, but his mind remained sharp through most hours. Margaret had hidden that morning's newspaper beside his chair. He still completed the crossword in ink. Car doors slammed outside. Through the kitchen window, Margaret watched their daughter Carol and youngest son Michael approach with matching expressions of grim determination. Carol carried more boxes. Michael held his phone at recording height. An intervention, David announced, as if choreographed. We've all agreed this is best. They invaded her kitchen like strangers, spreading glossy brochures across the table she'd set with Sunday china. Sunset Manor featured smiling seniors on manicured lawns, activities, calendars promising bingo and crafts. Move-in date, 30 days. You'll love it, Carol promised, not meeting Margaret's eyes. No more yard work, no more worrying about Dad wandering. Your father has never wandered in his life. Mom. Michael's voice carried practiced patience. Last week he asked me who I was. You arrived at 9 p.m. He's confused after dark sometimes. Exactly. Michael angled his phone toward her. That's why this is necessary. Footsteps creaked overhead. Frank shuffled downstairs in his navy robe, white hair uncombed, blinking at the gathering. "Margaret? Why are there strangers in our house?" Michael's phone captured it all. The confusion, the fear, the moment their father failed to recognize his own children through his morning fog. Carol whispered, "Dementia," to David. Margaret wanted to scream that he'd know them perfectly in an hour after coffee and conversation brought him fully awake. Instead, she signed papers her children thrust forward. Temporary asset management, emergency contacts, medical releases. The words blurred together while David's pen marked X after X. They left before noon, promising to return Tuesday with movers to begin downsizing. Margaret found Frank in his study afterward, lucid now, holding their wedding photograph. 56 years smiled back from the frame. Her in borrowed lace, him in dress whites, neither imagining their children would one day treat them like problems to solve. "They took your mother's silverware," Margaret said quietly. Frank set down the photograph. "And my war medals. I noticed this morning." They sat together in the emptying house. Two people everyone had stopped seeing. Outside the window, their garden grew wild with neglect, roses heavy with unpruned blooms. Margaret thought of her grandmother's wedding ring, gone from its velvet box sometime between Sunday service and this moment of theft disguised as care. Tomorrow she would fight back. Tonight she simply held her husband's hand and tried to remember when their children had stopped being family. Margaret discovered the library computer system at 78, driven by desperation and the bathroom landline her children hadn't thought to disconnect. Monday morning, while Frank sorted through papers he could no longer understand, according to his children's narrative. She made 7 calls to elder law attorneys from behind a locked door. The conversations followed identical patterns. Professional interest until she mentioned David Kellerman, prominent developer. Then careful excuses. Conflicts of interest, full caseloads, retirement. The 7th attorney interrupted her second sentence. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Your son's firm handles too much property law in this county." Margaret hung up and cried silently into a towel. Then she dried her face, applied lipstick with hands that barely shook, and told Frank she needed groceries. The public library stood 3 blocks away, close enough for her careful walk. She'd spent 30 years as a school librarian before retirement. The building welcomed her like an old friend. The reference desk volunteer, too young to remember Margaret's tenure, showed her how to search online for patient advocacy services. Most results offered gentle guidance through facility placement, exactly what she didn't need. But buried in page 4 results, Elder Rights Underground Network for those being disappeared. The website looked hastily built, almost deliberately unprofessional. A contact form requested only first names and zippy codes. Margaret typed carefully with 2 fingers. Margaret, children forcing nursing home. Husband former judge, fully competent. Assets being stolen. Please help. She walked home slowly, checking addresses she'd known for 50 years, proving to herself that her mind still worked perfectly. Frank sat at the kitchen table attempting a jigsaw puzzle their children had left. Cognitive exercises, Michael called them. The pieces showed a lighthouse, but someone had removed half the sky. "How was shopping?" Frank asked. Margaret set down her empty canvas bag. "I forgot my wallet." He nodded, accepting the lie because he trusted her. Because after 56 years, they still assumed the best of each other. She wondered when their children had stopped offering them the same courtesy. Tuesday morning brought a knock at 9 a.m. sharp. Margaret opened the door to find a woman in her early 40s wearing medical scrubs and carrying a clipboard. Professional smile, efficient bun, Lanyard reading, Diane Chen, patient care advocate, Medicare approved. Mr. and Mrs. Kellerman, I'm here for your initial home health assessment. Diane's voice carried practiced authority. Your son David arranged everything. Margaret stepped back, letting the stranger enter. David had mentioned nothing about home health services. But perhaps this was standard procedure before facility placement, another box to check on their children's timeline. Diane moved through the house with purposeful efficiency, documenting safety hazards on her tablet. She photographed the stairs, tested the bathroom grab bars, examined the kitchen appliances. Normal enough, except her eyes cataloged different things. Empty walls where artwork had hung, gaps on shelves where Frank's military memorabilia belonged, the hollow spaces their home had become. Your wedding photo is lovely, Diane said, studying the frame on Frank's desk. Are those your children? Somewhere. Margaret's voice came out bitter. Diane looked up from her tablet. Mrs. Kellerman, I need to check your smoke detectors. Would you mind showing me around upstairs? They climbed together, Diane supporting Margaret's elbow with unexpected gentleness on the second-floor landing, away from Frank's hearing. Diane stopped. I got your message last night. She kept her voice low. The Medicare credentials are fake. I'm here to help you fight back. Margaret's knees weakened. Diane guided her to sit on the top step. You're really from that website? I lost my license 2 years ago, challenging a nursing home chain where residents died. Diane sat beside her. Now I work outside the system. Are you ready to document everything? Margaret thought of her empty jewelry box, her husband's missing medals, her children's efficient theft disguised as concern. Yes. Good. Diane pulled a small device from her medical bag. Let's start teaching you how to fight invisible. Wednesday morning began with cognitive exercises that looked like conversation. Diane sat across from Frank at the kitchen table, a notebook open between them, asking about cases he'd judged decades ago. Tell me about the hardest decision you ever made from the bench. Frank's hands wrapped around his coffee mug, steam rising between his weathered fingers. Walker versus State, 2005. Adult children tried forcing their mother into a facility against her will. She was 83, living alone, managing fine. But they wanted her house sold. What did you rule? That autonomy doesn't expire with age. That confusion isn't incompetence. That the least restrictive environment must be honored unless clear danger exists. His voice gained strength, the legal framework anchoring his thoughts. I cited precedent going back to 1967, established that financial motivation invalidates guardianship petitions. Diane's pen moved across paper, documenting his perfect recall while her phone recorded from the windowsill. Evidence of the sharp mind his children claimed had vanished. Margaret watched from the doorway, holding financial statements Diane had asked her to photograph. Her flip phone felt foreign in arthritic hands, but she'd learned to steady it against the counter, capturing page after page of unauthorized withdrawals. $47,000 gone in 3 years, signed with signatures that looked like hers but weren't quite right. Your turn, Mrs. Kellerman. Diane gestured to the chair beside Frank. Let's review your medication schedule. They spent an hour documenting Margaret's perfect adherence to her blood pressure regimen, her detailed meal planning, her systematic household management. All evidence of competence her children dismissed as habit rather than cognition. Afternoon brought Diane to the garden with pruning shears and questions. Margaret and Frank watched from the kitchen window as she worked the neglected roses, dead-heading blooms no one else had noticed dying. She's the first person to touch those plants in months, Frank said quietly. Carol said roses were too much work for our age. Margaret's throat tightened. Carol said lots of things. Thursday arrived with Carol herself, all efficiency and false concern. "Mom, I'm here to help clear out Aunt Helen's china. You won't need it at Sunset Manor, and storage is expensive." Diane materialized from the hallway in her aide disguise. "Mrs. Kellerman, your physical therapy session?" Carol's smile went rigid. "The aide. I forgot David mentioned you." "Ms. Chen," Diane corrected pleasantly. "Shall I make tea while you visit?" In the living room, Margaret performed stretching exercises while Diane positioned herself near the dining room entrance. Carol's phone conversation drifted clearly. "Yes, the full set. Canton pattern, 1890s. Probably 15,000. My mother doesn't know the value. Dementia, you understand." Diane's phone captured every word. Margaret stretched her hamstring and said nothing. Friday evening brought the garden's reward. Frank had refused Michael's vitamin drink that afternoon, pouring it down the sink when his son checked his phone. By sunset, his mind stayed clear. No confusion, no disorientation, just an 81-year-old man who knew exactly where he was. They joined Diane among the roses as spring darkness gathered. Frank touched a heritage bloom with gentle expertise. "This is a Madame Hardy. My grandmother grew them. You prune after first frost, feed with fish emulsion monthly. Watch for black spot on the third leaves." Diane's phone recorded it all. The detailed instructions, the steady hands, the professor's patience as he taught. Evidence that the man his children called incompetent could discuss complex botanical care with perfect clarity. "These are survivors," Frank continued, moving to another bush. "They've weathered every storm for 3 generations. People think old roses are fragile, but they're stronger than anything modern. They just need someone who remembers how to tend them properly." Margaret met Diane's eyes across the garden bed. They both understood Frank wasn't talking about flowers anymore. Above them, Michael's car pulled into the driveway hours earlier than expected, headlights sweeping across the garden where they knelt together among the roses. Saturday morning brought David with a real estate agent Margaret had never met. They moved through the house like appraisers at an estate sale, photographing rooms where she'd raised 3 children, measuring spaces that held 56 years of marriage. "The Victorian charm will sell quickly," the agent told her partner, voice carrying from the master bedroom. "Shame about the owner's situation. David mentioned his father's gambling debts nearly destroyed them." Margaret, folding laundry in the hallway, went very still. Frank didn't gamble, had never gambled. Not once in their marriage. "Gambling debts?" the partner asked. "What?" "Oh, I meant David's debts. Got my notes mixed up." Papers rustled. 300,000 in the hole. Needs this sale desperately. Diane appeared with a tea tray, the perfect helpful aid. Margaret continued to the linen closet, where David's briefcase sat unattended on a chair. Her hands shook as she lifted folders, photographing pages as quickly as her flip phone allowed. Loan applications marked denied. Sunset Manor contracts showing a $15,000 referral bonus. Letters from casinos regarding outstanding markers. Her son wasn't saving them. He was saving himself. "Dad," David's voice drifted from the study. "We need to discuss the property value." Frank sat in his leather chair, the one piece of furniture too heavy for his children to remove easily. He'd skipped Michael's vitamin drink again that morning. His eyes tracked David with judicial assessment. "Your medals," Frank said quietly. "The Bronze Star I earned at Incheon. The Navy commendation from my JAG service. Where are they?" "Safely stored, Dad. We talked about this." "No, we didn't. I'd remember. That medal came from the Richardson case. naval officer accused of espionage, 1967. I defended him, proved the charges false, saved his career. 3 months of my life in that courtroom. Frank's voice strengthened. The Silver Star was from combat. I carried a wounded Marine to safety while under fire. You don't forget the weight of carrying someone who's dying. David's developer smile cracked slightly. You're having a good day. That's wonderful. I'm having a clear day. There's a difference. One means my mind works sometimes. The other means my mind works always. But someone's been interfering with it. The real estate agent called from upstairs. David escaped, but not before Frank met Margaret's eyes. He knew. Somehow, through the fog his children had created, he'd figured it out. Sunday morning arrived too early. Michael's car appeared at dawn, unusual for their youngest, who rarely visited before noon. Margaret heard him moving through the house, opening drawers, checking cabinets. The bathroom door was locked. She heard him test the handle. Looking for something? Diane emerged from the kitchen. Michael startled. The aide. You're here early. Mrs. Kellerman needed help with her bath. Diane held a basket of cleaning supplies. Safety first. His eyes narrowed, scanning the living room. Then he saw it. The smoke detector that hadn't been there Thursday, positioned perfectly to view the room where Frank took his evening drinks. That's new, Michael pointed. Fire safety assessment. Your brother approved it. He pulled a chair over, unscrewed the detector, found the camera in seconds. His face went cold, professional. He methodically searched the house, finding 3 more cameras, destroying each one with efficient violence. Get out, he told Diane. You're fired. If you come back, I'm calling the police for exploitation of vulnerable adults. Margaret appeared on the stairs, still in her robe. Michael? Not now, Mom. He pulled out his phone, already calling. David? We have a problem. By afternoon, all 3 children had arrived with lawyers. They filled the living room like an occupation force, presenting termination papers for Diane's services, threatening restraining orders, speaking about their parents rather than to them. 7 days, David announced. Moving date is next Monday. This has gone on long enough. That evening, Margaret and Frank sat in their stripped dining room, eating soup from paper plates. The silver was gone, the china gone, their wedding dishes sold to pay for their own imprisonment. But in Margaret's pocket, a burner phone grew warm with a single text. Tomorrow, 3 a.m., garden shed. Bring every document you've hidden. Frank reached across the table, taking her hand. We fight? We fight, Margaret confirmed. They came like a corporate raid. 3 children, 2 lawyers, and a threat Margaret could taste in the back of her throat. Sunday afternoon sunshine fell through windows that had witnessed 56 years of family gatherings, now casting light on strangers wearing her children's faces. Ms. Chen. David's lawyer spoke first, a woman in a charcoal suit who had never met Margaret before today. Your services are terminated effective immediately. My clients have documented evidence of exploitation, unauthorized surveillance, interference with family decisions, potential theft of confidential information. Diane stood in the kitchen doorway, still holding dish towels from lunch cleanup. Her expression stayed neutral, professional. I understand. I'll gather my materials. Now. Carol stepped forward, blocking the hallway. You'll leave now. We've changed the locks. Your key, please. Margaret watched Diane pull a house key from her pocket, setting it on the coffee table with careful precision. But something passed between them in that moment. A glance, a slight nod toward Margaret's cardigan pocket where the burner phone sat hidden. Mrs. Kellerman? Diane approached slowly. Thank you for allowing me to help. I hope your transition to Sunset Manor goes smoothly. She touched Margaret's shoulder in what looked like a polite goodbye. Her lips barely moved. Shed. 3 a.m. Everything hidden. Then Diane was gone, escorted out by Michael as if she were a criminal. The front door closed with finality that echoed through the stripped house. Well, David exhaled, loosening his tie. That problem solved. Now, we need to discuss the accelerated timeline. Timeline? Frank looked up from his chair, confusion clearing to sharp attention. The move is next Monday, 7 days, or pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like checklists. Dr. Harrison's evaluation made it clear that rapid placement is necessary for Dad's safety. Margaret's hands fisted in her lap. You can't change the date without... We have power of attorney, Mom. We absolutely can. David sat on the ottoman Frank had refinished 30 years ago, bringing himself to eye level with his parents like they were children. This is for your own good. Both of you are declining faster than we realized. The surveillance equipment alone proves you can't make sound decisions. Surveillance equipment we didn't install, Margaret said quietly. Exactly. Michael spoke from the doorway. That woman manipulated you into letting her spy on us. She's probably been stealing information to sell to scam operations. You couldn't even recognize you were being exploited. Frank stood, slower than he once moved, but with judicial authority intact. That woman has a name. Diane Chen. And she showed us more care in 1 week than you three have managed in 6 months. Carol laughed, sharp and bitter. Care? Dad, she was using you. Using us for what exactly? She photographed our roses. She helped your mother reach the high kitchen cabinets. She listened when I talked about the war. What terrible exploitation. She installed cameras in our parents' home. David's voice went hard. She's facing charges if she comes back. The room fell silent, except for the grandfather clock. Another item Carol had already priced with a dealer, Margaret knew from overhead conversations. 7 days, Carol repeated, gathering her purse. Movers arrive next Monday at 8 a.m. Be packed and ready. We'll do final walkthrough Sunday night. They left in formation, lawyers trailing behind, leaving Margaret and Frank alone in the echoing house. Evening crept through windows, painting shadows across walls once covered with family photos, now sold or destroyed. Margaret made soup from canned stock. Her cooking pots were gone. They ate on paper plates at the bare dining table. Two people who'd shared 56 years of meals, now reduced to disposable dinners. Tell me about Walker v. State, Margaret said softly. Frank's eyes focused, legal mind engaging. Walker v. State, 2005. I ruled that autonomy doesn't expire with age, that financial motivation invalidates guardianship, that we owe our elders the presumption of competence until proven otherwise. He met her gaze. I never thought I'd need my own precedent. Margaret pulled the burner phone from her pocket, typed carefully. We want to fight. The response came immediately. Tomorrow, 3 a.m., garden shed. Bring every document you've hidden. She showed Frank the screen. He reached across paper plates and canned soup, taking her hand. Then we fight, he said. Outside, their garden waited in darkness, holding secrets only roses remembered. 3 a.m. darkness held different weight than midnight, heavier, more honest, belonging to the insomniacs and conspirators. Margaret and Frank moved through their stripped house like ghosts haunting their own lives, carrying documents hidden in recipe boxes and photo albums their children hadn't yet stolen. The garden shed smelled of earth and possibility. Inside, a battery lantern illuminated faces Margaret had never met, but somehow trusted. people who'd chosen to gather in darkness to help two strangers fight their own children. Margaret, Frank. Diane performed introductions quickly. James Walsh, attorney. Rosa Martinez, social worker, and your neighbors. 12 people crowded the small space. Mrs. Patterson from next door, the Johnsons from across the street, even young Tom Chen, who mowed their lawn before David fired him, claiming unnecessary expenses. They'd all been watching, documenting, caring when Margaret thought no one noticed. We have evidence. James spread documents across the potting bench, his disbarred attorney's hands still moving with courtroom precision. David received $15,000 from Sunset Manor as a referral bonus. That's elder abuse by legal definition, financial exploitation through coerced placement. Rosa added her files. Sunset Manor has 7 deaths in 6 months under suspicious circumstances. State investigation pending. 3 families report similar patterns. Adult children receiving kickbacks, rapid placement, asset liquidation. Mrs. Patterson pulled out her phone. I've been filming from my bedroom window. Here's Michael removing boxes at 2 a.m. last Tuesday. Carol loading her car with what looked like artwork Wednesday night. David meeting with the real estate agent 4 times without you present. Margaret's throat tightened. You've all been watching? We've been protecting, Mr. Johnson corrected gently. We tried visiting after your fall. Carol turned us away, said you were too fragile for company. We knew something was wrong. Frank studied the evidence with judicial assessment. This is substantial, but we need a legal framework to present it. James, what's our strategy? Emergency injunction to stop the Monday move. Competency hearing to challenge the power of attorney. I can't represent you officially, but I can draft the filings. You'll need to appear pro se, representing yourselves. I've done it before. Frank's voice strengthened. 40 years on the bench. I know procedure. Dawn crept through the shed's small window as they refined their plan. Margaret would continue photographing assets for documentation. Frank would collect Michael's vitamin drinks for testing. The neighbors would maintain surveillance. James would prepare legal filings. Rosa would gather evidence about Sunset Manor's violations. We appear compliant, Diane summarized. They think they've won. That's our advantage. The group dispersed before sunrise, leaving Margaret and Frank alone in the shed among seed packets and garden tools. Through the window, their heritage roses caught first, light, survivors of 3 generations preparing for another storm. Come on. Frank took Margaret's hand. Let me teach you about soil pH before they wake up. They knelt in damp earth, Frank explaining acidity levels and nutrient absorption with perfect clarity, while Margaret mentally recorded every word as evidence of his competence. When Sophia arrived, Rosa's teenage daughter, 15, and grieving her own grandmother lost to similar schemes, she found them planting new roses together. My abuela loved gardens, Sophia said softly, kneeling beside them. She died alone in a place like Sunset Manor. They wouldn't let us visit. Margaret squeezed her hand. Then we plant this one for her. Rosa Remembrance. A heritage variety that survives anything. At noon, David's car pulled into the driveway. Margaret and Frank met him inside, surrounded by boxes marked for packing, cooperatively sorting belongings like obedient parents preparing for exile. David relaxed visibly. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. We're just old people, David. Margaret kept her voice gentle. What choice do we have? Under the table, her flip phone captured photographs of every item David inventoried, building the asset documentation that would eventually help convict him. Frank handed her the recipe box, secretly filled with flash drives, as David climbed the stairs. their evidence multiplied with every seemingly compliant gesture. Outside, 12 neighbors watched and recorded. In her car down the street, Diane coordinated the growing resistance. And in the garden, new roses took root in soil that had weathered worse storms than this. Tuesday morning began with Margaret's performance as a confused elderly woman struggling with technology. She sat at the kitchen table, Frank's laptop open before her, clicking randomly while Carol supervised from the doorway. "Mom, what are you trying to do?" "Email recipes to my friend Dorothy." Margaret squinted at the screen with convincing bewilderment. "But these buttons don't make sense." What Carol couldn't see, Margaret's flip phone beneath the table, photographing each financial statement as she accidentally opened them while searching for email. Upload, delete browser history, repeat. Every document traveled to Diane's encrypted server while Margaret played helpless. Carol sighed. "This is exactly why you need supervised care. You can't manage basic tasks anymore." Margaret let her believe it. Better to be underestimated than prevented. Across town, Diane's network executed their parallel campaign. James filed injunction papers at the courthouse, requesting emergency stay of Monday's forced placement. Rosa compiled violation reports from 3 families who'd lost parents to Sunset Manor's system. Deaths under suspicious circumstances, kickback payments, forged medical documents. Wednesday afternoon brought Michael with his vitamin drinks, the chemical cocktail that transformed Frank's mild evening confusion into disorienting fog. But this time, Frank was ready. "Thanks, son." He accepted the glass, waited for Michael to check his phone, always checking his phone, always disconnected, then poured the liquid into a sealed container Diane had provided. He mimed swallowing, grimacing appropriately. "Tastes chalky today. New formula. Better for cognitive support." Michael never looked up from his screen. Frank maintained his act through dinner, pretending gradual confusion, calling Margaret by her maiden name when Michael walked through, playing the role his son expected while staying clear-minded enough to note every detail for future testimony. That evening, Carol caught Margaret at the laptop again, files clearly visible on screen before Margaret could close them. "What are you doing?" Carol's voice went sharp. Margaret blinked with practiced confusion. "Trying to email recipes to Dorothy. These buttons keep opening the wrong things." "Those are bank statements, Mom. Private financial documents." "Are they? I thought these were my recipe files." Margaret touched the screen uncertainly, the perfect image of technological incompetence. "Everything looks the same on these machines?" Carol's suspicion faded to exasperation. She couldn't imagine her 78-year-old mother capable of deliberately accessing financial records for documentation purposes. The thought simply didn't compute within her narrative of decline and incapacity. After Carol left, Margaret uploaded the final batch of evidence. 3 years of unauthorized withdrawals, forged signatures, David's gambling debts hidden in complex loan documentation, everything Diane needed to prove systematic exploitation. Frank found her in the study afterward, staring at numbers that told the story of their children's betrayal. $312,000, taken gradually enough that Margaret had noticed small discrepancies. But David had dismissed her concerns as confusion about automatic payments. She'd been right all along. Not paranoid, not declining. Right. "I knew something was wrong." Her voice broke. "Years ago, I tried telling David the numbers didn't match. He said I was getting confused, that I should let him handle everything. I doubted myself." Frank pulled her close. "That's what they counted on. Our self-doubt. Our willingness to believe we were failing rather than believe our children would hurt us. Wednesday night, James filed the completed injunction. Rosa submitted her violation reports to the state board. 12 neighbors signed affidavits describing the systematic isolation they'd witnessed. In courthouses and offices, paperwork began moving through channels that would converge on Monday morning. The same Monday, David expected to ship his parents to exile and claim their house. Thursday would bring the competency evaluation with Dr. Harrison, David's paid expert. But Frank was ready now, clear-minded without Michael's chemical interference, preparing to demonstrate exactly how competent a supposedly declining 81-year-old judge could be. Margaret found him reviewing case files in his study, legal mind fully engaged. "Tell me again about Walker v. State," she said. Frank smiled, sharp and certain. "Walker v. State, 2005. The case where I ruled that autonomy doesn't expire with age. I'm going to use my own precedent to save us." Outside, spring darkness settled over their garden. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. But tonight, they'd built a fortress from documents and determination. Tomorrow, they'd start fighting back. Thursday morning arrived with the phone call Margaret had been dreading. David's voice carried false cheerfulness that made her stomach clench. "Good news, Mom. Dr. Harrison can see Dad tomorrow for his competency evaluation. 9 a.m. sharp." Margaret gripped the kitchen counter. "We didn't request an evaluation. It's part of the placement process, standard procedure. Don't worry, Dr. Harrison is very experienced with seniors." After he hung up, Margaret immediately texted Diane on the burner phone. "Competency eval tomorrow, Dr. Harrison." The response came quickly. "Harrison takes payments for favorable reports. We're on it." Across town, Rosa began pulling records. Dr. Harrison had testified in 17 guardianship cases over 2 years, recommending facility placement in 16. 7 of those patients died within 6 months. His consultation fees averaged $5,000, always paid by the adult children seeking guardianship. Margaret spent Thursday afternoon searching the house for Frank's law library, the first edition volumes he'd collected over 40 years. She found the sales receipt in David's hastily organized papers. Vintage law books, MISC titles, $500, sold to a dealer who specialized in rare volumes. She knew those books. The 1847 Blackstone's commentaries worth $12,000 alone, the signed Holmes collection, the complete bound Supreme Court reporters from 1910-1950, $50,000 minimum, sold for $500. When Frank discovered his Navy uniform in trash bags by the curb, the dress whites he'd worn at their wedding, the jacket bearing his commendations, he sat on the porch steps and wept. Margaret found him there, holding fabric that smelled of mothballs and memory. "They threw away my service," he said quietly, like it meant nothing. But then something shifted in his expression. He went to his study, pulled out paper, and began writing. A complete timeline of his military career. Dates, locations, commanding officers, cases prosecuted as JAG, medals earned, and why. Every detail perfect, every memory intact. "Evidence," he told Margaret. "They'll say I can't remember. I'll show them I remember everything that matters." Friday morning brought Dr. Harrison. Expensive suit, practiced smile, briefcase full of standardized tests designed to make elderly people fail. David hovered throughout, occasionally prompting answers that would demonstrate decline. "Mr. Kellerman, what year is it?" Frank answered correctly, then added, "Though I notice you're using the mini mental state examination, which has been criticized for cultural bias and inadequate assessment of executive function. The Montreal Cognitive Assessment would be more appropriate for someone with my educational background." Dr. Harrison's smile faltered. I'll ask the questions, Mr. Kellerman. Of course. Proceed with your inadequate assessment tool. Margaret watched from the doorway, filming discreetly on her flip phone. Frank deliberately failed some memory questions, today's date, the current president, while simultaneously analyzing the legal framework of competency evaluation with perfect clarity. The standard is whether I can manage my own affairs, Frank said conversationally, not whether I remember trivial information. That precedent was established in Jacobson versus Massachusetts, 1905, though more specifically applied to elder competency in Miller versus California, 1998. Dr. Harrison wrapped up quickly, clearly unsettled. I'll have my report ready by Monday. I'm sure you will. Frank met his eyes with judicial assessment. I'm equally sure David has already discussed your fee. After they left, Margaret followed Dr. Harrison to his car. Through the window, she filmed David handing him a manila envelope. The doctor opened it slightly, bills visible inside, then drove away. That evening, Margaret developed prints from the photographs she'd taken of David's briefcase earlier. The law library dealer's actual appraisal. Collection valued at $47,000, $52,000. Exceptional condition. Willing to pay $45,000. David had pocketed $44,500 while reporting $500 on estate documents. Frank studied the evidence spread across their dining room table. What remained of their dining room table? They're not just stealing our assets. They're stealing our entire lives, piece by piece, and calling it care. Margaret squeezed his hand. Then we document every theft. And we make sure everyone sees exactly what they've done. Outside, spring darkness fell. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, they had evidence that would eventually help convict their own children. The thought should have brought satisfaction. Instead, it brought only grief. Saturday morning shattered with Michael's unexpected arrival at 7 a.m., finding Margaret in the garden shed with the burner phone pressed to her ear, Diane's voice giving instructions about Monday's injunction filing. What the hell is that? Michael grabbed the phone from her hand, scrolling through messages. His face went cold, professional. Mom, you've been talking to that woman, the one we fired. The one we threatened with restraining orders. He called David immediately, speaker on. They've been planning something. That aide is still involved. We need to move now. By noon, all three children had arrived, not with fake concern, but with raw fury. Carol's real estate agent's smile had vanished, replaced by the cold efficiency that valued assets over people. You've been working against us. She moved through the house, checking drawers, closets, anywhere Margaret might hide evidence. Playing confused while secretly gathering information. We're trying to protect ourselves. Margaret stood her ground. You're stealing from us. We're managing your affairs because you're incompetent. David's developer charm had cracked entirely. This is exactly why you need supervised care. Frank emerged from his study, clear-minded after days without Michael's drugged drinks. You're not managing our affairs. You're liquidating our assets to cover your gambling debts, David. $312,000 over 3 years, if Margaret's duplicate records are accurate, which they are. The room went silent. Dad, that's... You're confused. David's voice shook slightly. I'm not confused. I'm a retired judge with perfect recall of financial fraud statutes. California Penal Code 368, elder financial abuse. You forged our signatures on withdrawals, sold our property without consent, received kickbacks from Sunset Manor. That's felony exploitation. You can't prove any of that. But David's face had gone pale. Actually, we can. Margaret pulled documents from her cardigan pocket, the photographs she'd been taking all week. Bank statements showing your forgeries, the Sunset Manor referral agreement, the law library appraisal versus what you reported. Everything. Carol moved fast, grabbing the papers. But Margaret had already sent copies to Diane's server. The originals were just props now. Final papers. Carol thrust documents at Margaret. Sign them. Consent to immediate placement, transfer of remaining assets, acknowledgement of incapacity. No. The slap came so fast Margaret barely registered it before pain bloomed across her cheek. Carol's hand, weighted with her wedding ring, left a mark that would photograph well for evidence. You ungrateful... Carol raised her hand again, but Frank stepped between them. Touch her again, and I'll have you arrested for assault. I may be 81, but I still know every prosecutor in this county. Michael pushed past them to the shed, emerging with Margaret's burner phone. I've been recording you for weeks, talking to yourselves, accusing us of theft, paranoid delusions. This just proves you're unstable. Interesting. Frank's voice went judicial. Because we've been recording you, adding substances to my drinks. Benadryl, we'll have it tested. Discussing how to maximize inheritance while we're still alive. Coordinating with a corrupt doctor to falsify competency evaluations. That's conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Criminal negligence and fraud. David's phone rang. His bookie, Margaret knew from context, the panic in her son's eyes when he glanced at the screen. He was running out of time, out of money, out of options. Monday morning, you're gone. David's voice went hard. Police escort, immediate placement. You don't get a choice anymore. They left with promises of authorities and forced removal. Margaret sat at the stripped dining table, Carol's handprint still burning on her face. Frank called Diane, who arrived within an hour with Dr. Sarah Chen. No relation to Diane, but sympathetic to elder rights. Dr. Chen documented everything. Margaret's bruise, Frank's blood work showing Benadryl, the timeline of systematic abuse, legal evidence, medical evidence, photographic evidence. Sunday brought Sophia, Rose's daughter, helping them plant roses in what might be their last day in the garden. The teenager worked quietly, processing her own grief. My abuela died in a place like where they want to send you, Sophia said softly. They wouldn't let us visit. Said she was too confused for family. She died alone, calling for my mom. Frank squeezed her shoulder. Then we plant this one for her. And we fight so no one else disappears like she did. They worked until sunset. 3 generations tending earth that had weathered worse storms. Tomorrow would bring police and movers and forced exile. But tonight, they planted roses that would outlive them all. Heritage varieties that survived anything, just like the people who tended them. Monday morning arrived with the machinery of forced exile. A moving truck, 2 uniformed officers, David's lawyer with clipboard and determined expression. Margaret watched from the bedroom window as they assembled on the street like an invasion force, come to extract 2 elderly people from their home of 56 years. It's time, David's voice carried through the front door. We have legal authority and police escort. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. But James Walsh had been busy through the night. At 11:47 p.m., he'd filed an emergency injunction with Judge Patricia Chen, citing new evidence of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and potential criminal activity. The filing included Margaret's photographs, Dr. Sarah Chen's medical documentation, and affidavits from 12 neighbors. At 8:15 a.m., just as the movers began unloading dollies, A courier arrived with court documents. Emergency stay granted. Competency hearing ordered for Wednesday at 9 a.m. 72 hours to prove they could manage their own lives. David's face went from confident to panicked in seconds. You can't just... Who filed this? We did. Frank stood in the doorway, Margaret beside him. Pro se representation. Constitutional right to challenge guardianship proceedings. The police officers stepped back, recognizing the shift in legal ground. The movers looked to David for instruction he couldn't provide. His carefully orchestrated removal had collapsed into bureaucratic delay. You need the house sale. One officer spoke into his body cam, standard procedure for documenting interactions. That's what you said. You need the money from the house sale to cover debts. David's face went white. He'd said it on camera in front of witnesses. Admitted his financial motivation for forcing his parents into a facility. Exactly the kind of evidence that invalidated guardianship petitions. The movers left. The police stayed long enough to ensure no breach of peace, then departed. David's lawyer made frantic calls about expediting Wednesday's hearing. Carol arrived just in time to watch their carefully constructed plan crumble into legal complications. This doesn't change anything. Carol's voice carried false confidence. Wednesday, the judge will see you're incompetent. Then it's over. We'll see, Margaret said quietly. That night, Carol returned alone, using keys they hadn't yet changed. Margaret heard her in the living room, searching. The hidden camera memory cards. Carol found them behind the smoke detector, destroying them with methodical violence. What Carol didn't know: Diane had set up cloud backups. Every frame uploaded automatically, stored on encrypted servers Carol could never access. The physical cards were decoys, sacrificial evidence meant to give Carol false confidence. Tuesday became a battlefield of preparation. Frank practiced his statement with James in the study, refining legal arguments, preparing for hostile questioning. Margaret organized evidence with Rosa in the dining room. 3 years of financial documents, medical records, photographs of theft in progress. The children filed their own emergency motions, claiming immediate danger, describing cameras as paranoid delusions, and Margaret's documentation as obsessive behavior, indicating mental decline. Their lawyer painted a picture of 2 elderly people unable to recognize their own incapacity, being exploited by unscrupulous advocates. Evening brought Frank to his study, reviewing case files he'd kept from his judicial career. 40 years of precedent, hundreds of decisions, the accumulated wisdom of a lifetime spent interpreting law. He found the one he needed. Walker v. State, 2005. Margaret read over his shoulder. Adult children trying to force their mother into a facility for financial gain. Frank had ruled for autonomy, establishing precedent that protection of assets didn't justify removing someone's freedom. The case had been cited in 17 subsequent decisions. I never thought I'd need to cite my own precedent to save myself. Frank's voice carried bitter irony. Then we're lucky you were a good judge. Margaret squeezed his hand. Outside, spring darkness settled over their Victorian home. Tomorrow would bring the hearing that determined everything: their freedom, their home, their remaining years. But tonight, they had evidence, preparation, and the kind of righteous anger that came from watching your own children try to erase you while you were still breathing. Tomorrow, they would stand in Frank's old courtroom and fight for the right to exist on their own terms. Tomorrow, the exit their children planned would become something else entirely. Wednesday morning brought Frank Kellerman back to the courtroom, where he'd spent 20 years dispensing justice. The wood paneling looked the same, the seal behind the bench unchanged. But now he sat at the defendant's table fighting for his own autonomy instead of presiding over others' fates. Judge Patricia Chen reviewed the case file while David's legal team arranged their presentation. Glossy folders, professional exhibits, the polished machinery of a guardianship petition they expected to win easily. Your Honor, David's attorney stood, projecting confident sympathy. This is a tragic case of two elderly individuals unable to recognize their own decline. Mr. Kellerman experiences severe confusion. Mrs. Kellerman suffered a dangerous fall, and both have become vulnerable to exploitation by unscrupulous individuals. The children testified in sequence, each performance calibrated for maximum effect. David described finding his father unable to recognize him, emphasizing the fall that justified their intervention. Carol detailed the dangerous conditions she'd discovered. Surveillance cameras installed without their knowledge. Paranoid accusations of theft. Michael presented his edited recordings, clips showing only Frank's confused moments, stripped of context. Our father believes we're stealing from him. Michael's voice carried practiced concern. He's created elaborate conspiracy theories. This is classic paranoid dementia. Margaret watched her children lie with professional efficiency, transforming their systematic theft into loving concern. The attorney painted a picture of vulnerable seniors spiraling into decline, rescued by caring children who only wanted safety for their parents. Then came the pivot point. David's attorney mentioned Frank's complete inability to recognize family members, the cornerstone of their incompetence claim. Frank stood without permission, voice carrying judicial authority that silenced the courtroom. I recognize my children perfectly, counselor. I don't recognize who they've become. Judge Chen looked up from her notes. Mr. Kellerman, you're out of order. May I address the court, Your Honor? Pro se representation grants me that right. A pause, then Judge Chen nodded. Proceed, briefly. Frank stepped forward, 81 years old and carrying 40 years of legal expertise. This case hinges on autonomy, whether age and mild confusion justify removing someone's fundamental rights. The standard isn't perfection. It's whether I can manage my own affairs with reasonable capacity. He spoke for 10 minutes without notes, never once losing his thread. He cited 5 cases, including his own Walker v. State precedent from 2005. He analyzed the doctrine of least restrictive environment, explaining how forced placement must be a last resort, not a first convenience. He quoted statutes on elder financial exploitation, on the difference between mild cognitive impairment and legal incompetence, on the constitutional rights that don't expire with birthdays. My children claim I can't recognize them. I recognize them every day. What I've failed to recognize until recently is that love doesn't always look like protection. Sometimes it looks like theft disguised as care, convenience disguised as concern, and inheritance collected early while the person whose life you're stealing is still breathing. David's face had gone pale. Carol stared at her hands. Michael simply looked away. I may forget what day it is sometimes. Frank's voice softened. I may call my wife by her maiden name some evenings when the sun sets and confusion comes. But I remember the law I served for 40 years. I remember the precedents I established to protect people exactly like me. And I remember that competency isn't measured by perfection. It's measured by whether someone can understand their choices and make decisions about their own life. He turned to Judge Chen. In Walker v. State, I ruled that financial motivation invalidates guardianship petitions, that adult children seeking to profit from placement cannot claim pure concern for safety. I established that precedent 20 years ago. I never imagined I'd need it to save myself from my own children. The courtroom held absolute silence. Frank returned to his seat beside Margaret, who squeezed his hand with fierce pride. Across the aisle, David's attorney shuffled papers, searching for a response to a legal argument delivered with perfect clarity by the man they'd claimed couldn't think straight. Judge Chen made notes, expression neutral. "We'll hear from the respondents. Mrs. Kellerman, you may present your evidence." Margaret stood, carrying 3 years of documentation that would dismantle her children's lives piece by methodical piece. Margaret Kellerman approached the evidence table with the same methodical precision she'd brought to 30 years of library work. Her hands shook slightly, not from confusion, but from preparing to publicly expose the children she'd raised, loved, and lost to greed. "Your Honor, I've managed our household finances for 56 years. When small discrepancies appeared 3 years ago, I began keeping duplicate records." She presented bank statements marked with her careful annotations. These show unauthorized withdrawals totaling $47,000 initially. David forged our signatures on transfer authorizations. She laid out the full forensic accounting James had helped her compile. $312,000 diverted through gradual manipulations. Loans to David's failing development company, Carol's commission from estate sales, Michael's payments for his technical consulting. All documented, all unauthorized, all theft. This is the Sunset Manor referral agreement showing David received $15,000 for placing us in their facility. Margaret's voice stayed steady despite the betrayal each document represented. "This is the law library appraisal. $47,000 worth of first editions sold for $500. With David keeping the difference." She played the video she'd filmed from the kitchen window. Dr. Harrison accepting an envelope from David in the driveway, David's voice clear. "The full consultation fee as discussed. I trust your evaluation will reflect our concerns." David's attorney objected. Margaret's evidence was ruled admissible. The case was crumbling. Diane took the stand next, presenting her credentials and explaining how Margaret had contacted her network, not the reverse. She played the full recordings, Frank's clear discussions of legal precedents, his detailed rose cultivation instructions, his perfect recall of military service. Then the darker footage. Michael adding powder to Frank's drinks, Carol discussing asset values with buyers, David admitting to his siblings that he needed the house sale to cover gambling debts. "This isn't cognitive decline," Diane testified. "This is systematic exploitation documented over 2 weeks. Mr. Kellerman's confusion followed a pattern. Worse after evening visits from Michael, who was adding Benadryl to trigger symptoms that would support their incompetence narrative. Rosa Martinez provided institutional evidence. Sunset Manor has 7 deaths in 6 months under suspicious circumstances. 3 families report patterns identical to the Kellermans. Adult children receiving kickbacks, rapid placement after manufactured crises, assets liquidated while residents are isolated from outside contact. The state investigation reveals a network of corrupt referrals worth hundreds of thousands." Judge Chen ordered a recess. In the hallway, David's attorney approached with settlement offers. Drop the criminal allegations, accept supervised living arrangements, split remaining assets. David stood by the bathroom, phone pressed to his ear, voice desperate. "I need more time, just 2 more weeks. The house sale will cover everything." His bookie, Margaret knew. The gambling debts that had started this entire nightmare. Her son, so desperate to avoid ruin that he'd been willing to destroy his parents instead. When court reconvened, Margaret presented her final piece of evidence. The timeline she'd constructed, showing exactly when each asset disappeared. Each signature was forged. Each piece of their life was stolen. Former school librarian's precision applied to documenting her own victimization. "I knew something was wrong for years," she testified. "David told me I was confused, that I was getting old and couldn't track finances anymore. I doubted myself. I thought maybe I was declining. But I kept duplicate records anyway, because my family survived the depression by documenting everything. Those records now prove I was right all along. Her voice broke slightly. I want you to understand what they took. Not just money and possessions. They took our confidence in our own minds. They made us doubt our sanity. They erased us while we were still alive, and they called it care. Judge Chen made extensive notes. David slumped in his chair, defeat written across his posture. Carol maintained her composed facade but kept checking her phone, probably calculating professional consequences. Michael had gone perfectly still. The technical problem he'd tried to solve now solving him with criminal implications. The evidence was overwhelming. 3 years of exploitation laid bare through Margaret's meticulous documentation and Diane's strategic recordings. Adult children transforming parents into assets, care into theft, and love into the coldest kind of betrayal. Judge Chen declared a recess until Friday for final arguments and verdict. But everyone in the courtroom already knew how this would end. Justice applied to those who'd spent years avoiding it. Thursday morning brought 12 neighbors to the witness stand, ordinary people who'd watched extraordinary cruelty unfold next door. Mrs. Patterson, 82 and sharp as the day she'd moved to the neighborhood 40 years ago, testified first. I tried bringing Margaret soup after her fall. Mrs. Patterson's voice carried quiet indignation. Carol turned me away at the door, said her mother had a contagious condition and couldn't receive visitors. I could see Margaret through the window, looking confused and alone. That's when I started documenting. She presented photographs taken from her bedroom window. David loading boxes at 2 a.m., Carol meeting with estate buyers in the driveway, Michael arriving with his vitamin drinks like clockwork every evening at 6. They redirected the Kellerman's mail to David's office. Mr. Johnson testified next. I'm the postal carrier. Saw the change of address forms, thought it was odd, but legal. Then Margaret asked me if I'd seen any letters from her sister's estate attorney. I realized they'd been intercepting her mail for months. One by one, the neighbors painted a picture of systematic isolation. Disconnected phone lines blamed on confusion about bills. Visitors turned away with excuses about rest and recovery. The couple who'd once hosted neighborhood barbecues reduced to prisoners in their own home. James Walsh took the floor for financial forensics, his disbarred status irrelevant to the devastating precision of his analysis. $312,000 diverted over 3 years through gradual manipulations. Small withdrawals initially, 500 here, 1,000 there. Then escalating as David's gambling debts mounted. By year 3, he was taking 20,000 at a time. He displayed charts showing the progression, the careful escalation designed to avoid triggering bank fraud alerts. Classic financial elder abuse pattern. The perpetrator conditions the victim to doubt their own record-keeping, then accelerates theft once authority is established. Then Sofia Martinez took the stand, 15 years old and carrying evidence that would demolish Michael's defense. She presented time-stamped photographs from a coffee shop where she'd been studying. I recognized him from my mom's description. He was researching on his laptop. Sophia pulled up the photos on the courtroom screen. How to trigger dementia symptoms. How to worsen confusion in elderly patients. Side effects of common medications that mimic cognitive decline. He was taking notes. The courtroom went silent. Michael's face had gone white, his technical problem-solving exposed as deliberate cruelty. My abuela died in a facility like Sunset Manor, Sophia continued, voice steady despite visible emotion. They wouldn't let us visit. Said she was too confused for family, that we upset her. She died alone, calling for my mom. When I saw him researching how to make someone seem more confused, I knew I had to document it. For my abuela, for the Kellermans, for everyone who gets erased while they're still breathing. Judge Chen recalled Dr. Harrison to the stand. Under sharp questioning about his evaluation methodology, the doctor's professional facade crumbled. Did you review Mr. Kellerman's complete medical history before your assessment? I reviewed the summary provided by the family. Did you perform standardized cognitive testing beyond the 5-minute mini-mental? The family indicated time was limited. Did you accept payment from David Kellerman for your services? A pause. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The courtroom erupted. Judge Chen gabbled for silence, but the damage was done. A medical professional refusing to answer questions about payment because doing so would incriminate him. This court will recess until tomorrow morning for final ruling. Judge Chen's voice cut through the murmurs. I'm warning all parties that criminal referrals are under serious consideration. The evidence presented suggests systematic elder abuse, financial exploitation, medical fraud, and conspiracy. This is not a family disagreement. This is potential criminal enterprise. David sat with his head in his hands. Carol's real estate agent composure had shattered completely. Michael simply stared at Sophia, the teenager who'd photographed his research and destroyed his defense. Outside, Margaret and Frank stood with Diane and Rosa, watching their children exit through a side door to avoid reporters. 3 people they'd raised, loved, and lost to something Margaret couldn't quite name. Not just greed, but the casual cruelty of viewing parents as assets rather than people. Tomorrow would bring the verdict. Tonight brought only grief for what their family had become. Friday morning arrived with the weight of finality. Judge Patricia Chen entered her courtroom, Frank's old courtroom, carrying a thick folder of notes and the authority to determine how 2 people would spend their remaining years. I've reviewed all evidence presented over these 3 days. Her voice carried judicial precision. This case involves fundamental questions about autonomy, exploitation, and the duties adult children owe their aging parents. The law requires I balance protection with freedom, safety with dignity. She began with the financial evidence. The power of attorney is hereby revoked for breach of fiduciary duty. The evidence shows $312,000 diverted through unauthorized transactions, forged signatures, and systematic theft disguised as asset management. All transferred assets must be returned within 30 days, and I'm ordering a complete forensic accounting under independent monitor supervision. David made a sound like something breaking. His last hope, access to the house sale that would cover his gambling debts, had just evaporated. Furthermore, I'm granting the Kellermans a permanent restraining order against forced placement. The evidence clearly shows this guardianship petition was motivated by financial gain rather than genuine concern for welfare. The referral kickback from Sunset Manor, the premature liquidation of assets, the manufactured evidence of decline, all demonstrate exploitation, not protection. Judge Chen turned to Frank directly. Mr. Kellerman, your testimony demonstrated exactly the competency your children claimed you'd lost. You delivered a coherent legal argument citing 5 cases including your own precedent. You analyzed complex constitutional principles. You showed perfect recall of your judicial career. While you may experience mild confusion, particularly when chemically induced by your son's interference, you clearly possess the capacity to manage your own affairs. Carol started to object. Her lawyer pulled her back down. I'm referring criminal charges to the district attorney for elder abuse under California Penal Code 368, financial exploitation, fraud, conspiracy, and assault. Mrs. Kellerman's documented injury from Carol Kellerman's physical violence. I'm also recommending professional discipline for Dr. Harrison through the State Medical Board for accepting payment to provide fraudulent evaluations. Judge Chen paused, letting the weight settle. But I want to address something beyond the legal findings. This case represents a betrayal that transcends criminal statutes. 3 adult children systematically dismantled their parents' lives, not through sudden violence, but through gradual erasure disguised as care. They stole not just money and possessions, but dignity, autonomy, and the fundamental right to exist on one's own terms. She looked at David, Carol, and Michael. You told yourselves this was necessary, that your parents couldn't manage, that you were protecting them. But the evidence shows you were protecting yourselves. From caregiving obligations, from financial difficulties, from the inconvenience of having aging parents who needed respect rather than removal. David collapsed. Forward, finally understanding the full scope of consequences. Carol screamed about appeal, but her voice carried desperation rather than conviction. Michael simply stood and left, walking out while the judge was still speaking. Mr. and Mrs. Kellerman. Judge Chen's voice softened slightly. Your precedent in Walker v. State 20 years ago guides us today. You ruled that autonomy doesn't expire with age. That financial motivation invalidates guardianship. That we owe our elders the presumption of competence. Thank you for your service, Your Honor. And thank you for teaching us all that sometimes the people who need protection from their families. The gavel fell. Case dismissed, criminal referrals filed, justice dispensed. Margaret and Frank walked out of the courthouse into afternoon sunshine. Their neighbors waited on the steps, along with Diane, Rosa, Sophia, and James. No celebration. The victory tasted too much like grief. That evening, they returned home to find the garden transformed. Their neighbors had spent the day restoring what the children had destroyed. Rescued plants returned to proper beds, new roses planted among heritage varieties, the shed cleaned and reorganized. Mrs. Patterson stood by the gate. We brought back everything we could save. Welcome home. Frank and Margaret stood in their garden, surrounded by people who'd chosen to care when their own children had chosen to steal. Diane officially became their healthcare advocate through proper legal channels. Her underground work validated by courtroom victory. The exit their children had planned had become something else entirely. An entrance to community, purpose, and the kind of family you build rather than inherit. 3 months after the verdict, Margaret Kellerman stood in what had once been her dining room, now transformed into something she'd never imagined at 78. The administrative heart of the Kellerman Center for Elder Autonomy. The room that Carol had stripped bare now held mismatched donated furniture. A conference table rescued from an office closure. Filing cabinets gifted by sympathetic attorneys. Whiteboards covered in case timelines and legal strategies. 15 elderly clients cycled through weekly, each fighting their own children's attempts at forced placement. Mrs. Chen is here with the Richardsons, Sophia called from the kitchen, now a consultation area where Margaret served coffee and practical advice in equal measure. Diane entered with a couple in their 70s, hollow-eyed with the exhaustion Margaret recognized from her own mirror 3 months ago. She set down her famous apple pie, Frank's grandmother's recipe, learned during those garden sessions that had saved their lives. Tell me when you first noticed something wrong, Margaret said gently, pulling out the intake forms she'd designed. Forms that asked not just about medical conditions, but about missing jewelry, changed locks, and children who stopped visiting unless money was discussed. Outside, Frank stood among the heritage roses with James Walsh, teaching 3 law students about elder rights precedent. His voice carried through the open window, steady, professorial, the judge he'd been before his children tried erasing him. Walker versus State established autonomy doesn't expire with age, Frank explained, deadheading a Madam Hardy Bloom. But precedent means nothing if attorneys won't take cases against prominent families. That's why we train you to recognize exploitation patterns early. The students took notes while Frank moved between bushes, his hands steady on pruning shears, his mind sharp without chemical interference. Some evenings still brought confusion. Sunset syndrome, the doctors called it. But Margaret had learned to see it as variation rather than decline. Rosa Martinez emerged from the converted carriage house she shared with Diane and Sophia, carrying violation reports on 3 facilities James was investigating. Sunset Manor settled, she announced. 7 families received compensation. The state revoked their license. Margaret absorbed the news quietly. David sat in county jail awaiting trial. Carol had lost her real estate license, and Michael's plea agreement included 10 years probation. Justice, but at the cost of any relationship with her children. Some nights, she still grieved for the family they'd been, before greed transformed love into theft. Mom? Sophia appeared at her elbow. Not Margaret's biological daughter, but the 15-year-old had started using the term naturally. Mr. Patterson called. His daughter's trying the same thing that happened to you. Can we help? Add him to Thursday's session. Margaret squeezed Sophia's shoulder. This girl who'd photographed Michael's research and helped plant roses for her own lost grandmother. Tell him to bring every financial document he can find. Afternoon brought their weekly community dinner. Neighbors filled the restored dining room, Mrs. Patterson, the Johnsons, Tom Chen, who'd resumed lawn duties. They shared strategies and phone numbers, building the network that had saved Margaret and Frank into something larger. Frank rose to speak, his 81 years evident, but his authority intact. The exit they planned for us became our entrance to something we never expected. We thought we were fighting to stay in our house. We were actually fighting to build a home for everyone who refuses to disappear. Through the window, their Victorian glowed with evening light. In every room, someone was being heard, believed, helped. Margaret watched Frank return to the garden, Sophia following to learn about winter preparation. Their children had tried to erase them while they were still breathing. Instead, they'd planted roots deeper than anyone imagined possible, and taught others to do the same.